even though some of you have been here before, I'm going to kind of go through it, but I'm going to try to do it a little bit more. Quantum consciousness functions very succinctly so we can get some conciseness in video for our audience out there. So bear with me if you've heard it before. Blow along with it and see if it strikes you. I wrote things a little differently on the board for newbies that have not heard this before. So tonight, as we go through how consciousness is really interfacing with reality, it's going to blow some people's minds. And some people wonder if it's going to upset their belief systems, and whether they're Christians or New Agers or Hindi or Muslim, and it's not going to upset your belief system. What I'm teaching you tonight, 100% will bring even more strength and fervor to their belief system that they already exist in. And so sometimes, because I speak to wide audiences, I have to be able to have more of a universal language that can be transmitted to each person. And so I like to think of religions as kind of software program languages, and that everybody's trying to program the greater whole, this place called Earth, their inner experience, what they experience in the physical. We want to see their individual religions more as a software programming language for trying to create that, and they have different ways because of the experiences or the areas that they're from to foresee that. And in my own studies of all the different religions and all the theologies, philosophies, ideologies, and mindsets and science, I put together something that should be universally understood through all of those. And so there's some language choices I might make tonight that might not be in your belief system foundation. But try to use your synonyms, meaning your concepts that mean something similar, and replace those if I happen to use a Christian term and you want to put higher power or source or creator or higher self in play of what I say God, then do so. If you don't believe in any kind of religion kind of function or higher power kind of concept, I'm going to alert you to some consciousness programming and pineal glands, and using architecture, good programming, and the architecture is going to be, I want what's optimum for one and all, to me is the same thing as the force of God. And so even if you don't have a religious background, you're more of a philosophy person or a science person, you want what's optimum that serves myself and all others at the same time, will bring in the same codes as somebody wanting God's will or somebody wanting Allah's will or somebody. So I want to make sure we're mapping the same dialogue when I say things, okay? There's going to be some things I bring to you tonight that I have sourced for more Christian scriptures. However, I would not say this is a religious thing I'm teaching you. Things I've sourced is me understanding that there's some ancient technologies, whether it's Buddha, Krishna, Christ, there's ancient technologies that are still misunderstood. They had power to make change in the physical that people call miracles, but they are not miracles. They are changes that are feedback from changes that happen in mind. You move a mountain in here, it can move what looks like immovable things out here. We're not talking about big mountains in the hillsides. We're talking about that narcissist that you thought would always be in your life giving you hell suddenly moved because you don't play victim in your architecture to narcissism or authority anymore. So when you make big changes in your mind, you're making big changes in your interface out here. And so when you have a supranatural change in your architecture, you're going to make a supernatural change out here. But notice I say natural, it means logical. And so I want to get away, I want us to steer away from thinking mysticism is something magical. It looks kind of magical to others who might be perceiving it outside of yourself, but you know it's highly logical. And that's what I want us to get to. I want to take the woo-woo out. I want to take the magic out. Although it's still beautiful and amazing, I want people to understand there is logic in all of this, and it comes from clearing your conscience, which is what people might call your heart, and changing your mind, which are the thoughts that create the chemistry of your heart, and to understand how to coordinate those and listen to the feedback in your environment as well as the feedback in your body and how you feel inside, to start putting together the puzzle pieces of your life that feel so fragmented so that you can become whole and become one, become at peace, become enlightened, be in Christos, find Zion, whatever your language is. We're trying to create a heaven on earth experience. And that isn't to be some lofty, floaty thing. It's to make perfection out of all that you've endured. To make something beautiful and golden from all that you've endured good, bad, and ugly. I don't want you to hide from yourself anymore. I want you to be fully authentic, fully revealed. And I want you to turn shame and blame into golden opportunities to have lessons learned rather than calling them regrets, so that you can feel whole and evolved and keep moving upward to where you can finally get to the core of your being, where you don't have any unprocessed emotion, where you don't have old shame and blame programming. And when you do that, we've moved to that Christian concept that they get called last judgment. When you have that, you've been raptured. It means everything that's all wrapped up inside of you is finally moved, transfigured, and made whole. And that means you're atoned, at one with oneself. When this happens, and the reason why we want to do this is because we want to think about quantum consciousness. The quantum field is really hard to understand, and I think tonight, for time's sake, I'm not going to describe quantum mechanics and quantum consciousness and the subatomic science behind this. If you're interested in that, please go watch Dr. Quantum on YouTube. Go get some ideas around what quantum mechanics is, what kind of science experiments that they've done on the subatomic level, and how we can discern those for creation today. That's one place I want to lead you. I'm going to take you to what I can do with that. So go see that video so that you have that knowledge, and then this talk will be even more meaningful to you. But let's start from there. Your brain is always programming reality. And when you are programming reality, it's not just your conscious mind that's programming reality. See, a lot of people are really thinking that that's all we got going on, and there's so much more to us than that. We have different memory banks. Even when they're building sophisticated quantum computers or AI technology, or even just your computer at home or your phone, there's lots of different ways to store memory, isn't there? There's storing memory in the cloud, there's storing memory on a disk, the ROM that's inside your unit that's already there, right? So you can have removable information, you can have cloud information, you can have what the device will actually hold internal memory in it. So if even our devices have those types of memory storage, that we have different types of memory storage in our brains as well. And if we understand that your path and everything you attract to you in this physical virtual reality environment you're in is completely devised, attracted, and perceived through your computer. Conscious creation is just a tip of the iceberg. We've got subconscious programming, we've got unconscious program, or even, you don't even realize it, but other people are borrowing your system and hacking your system and using you for programming because you don't know how to system protect. They're hacking your ass. In fact, all of you people out there that know they're a little codependent, don't know how to say no to others, you're already being hacked. You're being hacked by that narcissist that knows that you'll do whatever if they give you a good enough guilt trip, or if they make you feel less enough, that you'll rise to an occasion. And so they've already learned how to commandeer your programming through your need and want schemas. Needs not met as a child. You want somebody to approve of you, so you overwork it. You overgive to these people. And so they hijack your system, and they're programming through your system because guess what? They ran out of feeling, which I'm going to talk about in a second. You've got to have feeling plus thinking together in order to fuel. So there's these thoughts, there's these ideas, and then you've got the fuel of feeling to push them into reality, to be contracted back to you as opportunities to act upon and experience those things. And so a lot of narcissists have kind of sold their soul enough, right? They are a little bit more sociopathic. They're not concerned with compassion of others. They're concerned about their agenda. And when they're only concerned about their agenda, they can't do anything with just their thought form. So who do they need next to them? They need to hijack somebody else's fuel. Oh, I'll get my wife to really be into this too, be my cheerleader, and now we got fuel to go with his thought forms to bring it to life. So you don't realize, and it's not always the male or female, it goes the other way too. There's plenty of happy wife, happy life guys out there too. Programming reality happens usually by default, most of all. The things that you don't even know you digested as a kid, or through your parents, or just through what you observed, you've picked up an idea of what reality is like through your environment, through your DNA, and all the people in your life up to date, plus your media and your society and maybe your church and your school. And you've got this whole crazy amount of synaptic connections with all kinds of data that don't agree with each other. You have a lot of faulty default systems. You got some bad programming going on up there, and you don't realize you're contracting to you a pathway with a lot of chaos code going on. Because let me tell you right now, you are not experiencing anything that isn't completely organized by your architecture. That means if you have a chaotic, screwed up experience, it's because you have disorganization and bad programming in here that you haven't cleaned up and organized yet. And you even have subconscious programming that you don't even know is in there because you went into fight or flight many times as a kid. And every time you did, you don't realize you digested into a different place of memory, the amygdalas, where when memory gets housed in there, it's allowed to keep repeating over time in cycles of time. That circumstance, it gets to rise again and again. And that's when your husband's acting out like your dad. And that's when your kids start to act out like your mom. And you're like, shit, I'm in Groundhog Day. And what that means is your generational patterns are scripting what other people have to act out for you because your subconscious programming is insisting upon it. So you don't realize your conscious mind right now is the least thing that's actually creating. In fact, we have pretty lazy conscious minds at this point. Now, lucky for us, there's this thing that some people call God, higher self, whatever. Scientists may kind of not agree with me at this point on this one, and that's okay. But imagine there's a force that's always trying to optimize everything in this existence, and it's trying to always optimize you, and it's always trying to bring you into your highest version of yourself. This force is always upon you. It's like gravity. It's like when this drops to the floor. This force is always upon you. That's why they say God is always knocking, but it's up to you to answer the door. What it means is that there's always a force trying to bring you into your highest being. And this force will do so by any means necessary. This force will try to do it gently through still small voice and little invitations that are just very sprightly. And those feel really good. And we call that using the staff, which is this part of the stick that shepherds use, the cane part, because they'll bring the sheep closer to them. But there's the other side of that called the rod. And this force is going to, when this isn't working, when he's trying to use the staff several times, the only choice might be to prod you there. But it's still guiding you. And we like to think of this as punishment. I don't see it that way. I see it as more information to let me know I'm not on path. I don't see it as punishment. I see it as a path course corrector. But if you see it as punishment, then you're going to live in a shameful state and you'll never forgive yourself. To me, I see, I just got course corrected. Okay, cool. I'm not holding on to it. I'm like, go over here. I got it. So we have to understand the rod and thy staff are there to comfort you, a lot of Christians will say, meaning this force is constantly giving you feedback. Come over here. Don't, and someone's trying to lead you. That staff is trying to lead you to where you need to go. But if you're not cluing in, you might get the prod. But both are meaningful. And so when an angel has to put on a hat, a black hat, and become your demon, it's really just God's energy or that force trying to keep you on path. So when you are reading that as, evil's trying to get me, or the demon's trying to get me, or if you're reading it so ugly, then you're going to turn around and run instead of go, what is it trying to tell me? What is it trying to teach me? What's it trying to get me to do? That's the foolishness of some of the way religions are working right now. They're telling you to run from the darkness. Say no, behaviorally modify, do this, judge. You feel like a robot. And I'm saying, turn around and ask, why is that even allowed to do that to me? Everything that happens to you is feedback. And if you have something in your life that doesn't feel good, it's feedback to let you know that there's something inside of you that allowed that to even come into being. And maybe there's some debugging you need to do, some forgiveness you need to have, some rebuking, saying, hey, I don't want that program anymore. Where did that program come from? Where's the source of that program, at least for myself? And a lot of the sources of our poor programming come from whom?
Parents.
Our parents. Yes, there's other caregivers sometimes, and we can blame society and we can blame the way religions teach things or whatever, but that's the source of your viral patterns. The things that are come upon you is your mom and dad. And guess where their sources are? Their parents. And this is why we call it a generational curse. So programming is not just your programming, is it? It's programming that was spoon-fed to you and even DNA downloaded to you through all your ancestors. And all the quantum field of what will attract you that is like your ancestors. But thank God there's this other force that comes through the pineal gland that we'll talk about that is trying to lead you to your most optimum self. So you've got the shepherd, you've got the staff, which is the pineal trying to lead you, and you have your DNA, which is the recorded places of where you've been, and also what's not processed that got uploaded into your environment in this lifetime. So we need to take a good look, and even if you're adopted, you can take a good look at your adopted parents because they're going to have very similar programming to your biological parents and so on, because quantum mechanics dictates that it has to. So even though you might not be biologically connected and have the DNA running through you, you're going to have similar patterns to that DNA line. And so it doesn't matter. It's still going to work. I'm not here to teach you how to manifest more things into your life. In fact, we got to de-manifest all the miscreations you've created by thinking you need or want something. You've gone out to create something to distract you from what you really need to do in here. And so this is the time to go inward and understand that. Programming reality via quantum consciousness. When we become aware that we're programming reality, a lot of people get super excited because then they're like, oh, I can create my dreams. I can go create all those things I didn't get before, all the things I want. And so you got this big charge of everybody running to try to create more things. Create that life, create those finances, create that man, create that girl, and get that boat, get that job, get that power. And all of them are running for that and never have once asked the question, why don't I already have it? Because everybody is trying so hard to force reality and become a manifester. Man, do I fester. They're trying to force reality to give them what they want, what they think they need, what they desire. And you hear Buddhists talking all the time, your whole job is to get rid of desire. In fact, you're not even supposed to desire getting rid of desire. That's what I've heard anyway. And I'm going to let you know, I don't want you desiring your life into oblivion, because manifestors cause a whole lot of miscreations. And all of these miscreations, because they're creating through need and want and desire. So if you start a creation, I'm going to use my thoughts and I'm going to use my feeling for fuel, which we're going to talk about right here. But I'm going to use those to go do something I desire. You're using all your feeling stuff for something you desire, and because you desire or you're needing or you're wanting, the energy you start from, you're going to probably get it, especially when you're younger. You get a lot more of what you desire. And when you get it, somehow it's going to own you, or it's not going to work out right, or you putting too much focus on that made you lose something good over here, and it's going to take you right back to the same energy you started from, which is needing, wanting, and desiring. And people haven't clued in that that's what's happening. And then when that happens enough times, then all of a sudden you have nothing left in you. You have no pleasure principle left in you, and that means you're in midlife crisis. Thank God for midlife crisis, because you reevaluate what you thought was important to you, because you've been chasing pleasure principle or the avoiding fear of pain principle way too much, because that's very low programming. When you watch that video with Dr. Quantum, they're going to talk about the law of attraction, the principles of law of attraction, and I'm going to compare it tonight to the power of prayer, or ask and receive, or intention setting. But the basic premise of law of attraction is this equation. It's thought plus feeling, and I'm going to put in parentheses, this can be emotions and sensory as well, one of the three or all of the three. So thought plus feeling is going to produce opportunities, maybe thought forms, maybe associations with someone, maybe a new vision, maybe a dream that has a vision in it. But it's going to produce some kind of opportunity. When that opportunity hits, if you just let it fly by you, you don't act upon it, then you're not going to bring it all the way to light. It's just going to be something that went through your mindset and doesn't get to come to light. So I've noticed that when you get an opportunity, you probably also want to share. So that way you can wear this and you want to act on it. You'll notice I changed my equation a little bit there because I always forget to add it. It's going to give you an opportunity, and now you need to share, which shares with other people, because where two or more are gathered is when system changes happen. And then you need to act on it, and when you finally do, you'll bring something to light, or you'll realize, get it? Realize something into reality. This is used by sales teams, this is used by church groups, this is used by vision board makers and in groups that are trying to do law of attraction all the time. You'll see the Tony Robbins of the world doing this. You'll see the Abraham Hicks of the world doing this. You will see a lot of people trying to exercise, not exorcise, but exercise, creating things through need and want using this equation. Now there's a lot more I want to teach you about law of attraction, but this is the basis of it. What I'm going to teach you today is the inverse. The principle of the inverse property of law of attraction. So let me say that I'm going to want to teach you the inverse property. So instead of trying to create everything out there, I'm going to take a look at what's already out here and all the experiences I'm having and how they're affecting me, and realize how did those get to come into creation? What's still unforgiven? What emotions are still unprocessed? What is going on inside of me that allowed that to come into my environment? And that's what we call love thy enemy. Love thy enemy is an opportunity to debug your system. When you have an experience that comes to you, most people, when that bad shit happens in the present moment, they go into one or two in states of being. They either go into fight, I'm going to go get my voice, or they go into flight. So when something bad happens, most people go into fight or flight. All that's happening in your brain is information from the hippocampus, where all your normal synapses are. When you go into fight or flight, you're just going to grab more data from that area and throw it in the vault called the amygdalas, where we hold all of our traumas, because you're reacting like it's a trauma. What love thy enemy means isn't some holier than thou statement, Christians. Not. What love thy enemy means, I want to look at this situation and I want to use it as a blessing to show me what's still caught up inside of me that allows this to even come into my life. And I'm going to love thy enemy, which means bring it closer, understand it, wrap it, and see what else it belongs to in my history of unprocessed emotion. That very moment can be the thing that debugs it from my system and exercise it, because I'm going to call that shit out by name. I'm going to call that demon out by name so I can debug it, exercise it from my system. I want to make sure we understand that the inverse property of law of attraction is way more useful at this juncture, because the reason why you don't have these things that you try to need and want and manifest into your reality is because you still have unprocessed data that limits you from having it, because there's still some agreement you're making inside through shame and blame that you're saying you're not worthy of it. And we need to debug that. And guess what? You're not the only one. Whichever parent you're reenacting at that moment has also got it, and that grandparent above them from that one, and you don't realize this is a chain reaction of generational curses, that's how New Agers might say it, or sins of the father or visit on the sons happens for females too. Really important to understand what we're shooting for. So this is how most people are creating, is through fight versus flight. Fighters think well, I'm not going to let the world get me. I'm going to go create. I'm going to consciously create something so it's not affecting me. And you'll notice these are the same letters, creative and reactive, in different orders, because they're handling things differently. But neither one of these is the solution. They're both going to just shove more information down in the amygdalas. And when this gets too full, there's going to come a moment where you get anxiety and bipolar feelings and depression, and you're not going to be able to even function anymore, because more and more data gets collected in here. It's going to eventually combust And when that happens, it's going to feel like earthquakes inside of you. It's going to feel like depression and something long and heavy is sat on top of you, a big hailstone. Conscious people who think they're creating, create which ways? Do you guys know? Conscious people try to create through what kind of notions? What do they call the act of creating that they do?
Intention setting.
They do. A lot of people do intention setting, and they oftentimes will write it down, or they get a group together and they share it and they intend together. That would be useful if indeed they're adding what? That's a thought. What do they need? They need feeling, sensory, or emotion. There are people who don't have enough feeling, good registered feelings, right? There's a lot of people in third world countries, so they're not going to do it through feeling. They might do it through some kind of emotion. Or they might do it through some type of scarification process, so they're feeling something in their body and have sensory. Or they might have different ways to do it. They might just do it from drumming.
Ritual. And
when they're drumming, they can feel the beat, and the beat creates an energy to take those thought forms into reality. So that's what it means to drum something up. Woo! Those all sound like pagan rituals, and those are all just third world countries doing stupid voodoo witch doctor stuff is what I hear from a lot of people in America. But in truth, what do sales teams do? Same exact thing. They socialize their ideas together, and they try to drum up feeling through maybe a ringing of the bell when you get a big win, or maybe they give you incentive of a contest of who's going to win and go to Hawaii for next month and not have to work and still get paid. Or maybe you get to have your name on this employee of the month recognition thing. And so they're trying to drum up the feeling with desirous things, with whatever thought form of what your quota is to meet. And then they all get together, they socialize it, so they're share wearing it. And then what's the other thing they teach you to do in sales teams? Close, close, close means act, act, act. And so therefore, they're getting responses. And the more enthusiastic and the more thought-provoking it is, and have you ever been to an MLM, Pyramid Scheme Group? And Amway is a big one. And so what are they doing in those groups? They're trying to get everybody together, constantly coming together. And they're trying to razz everybody up, get all their feelings, and tell them you have to act. You have to put out this many things on your Facebook, or this many things. Those groups are doing it. So what are church groups doing? They're praying. They're trying to pray something into reality. Or maybe somebody's sick, and they might do, if you have a charismatic group, they might do laying on of hands. You might go to a united church and they're going to do energy work or Reiki work on somebody. And what are they doing? Group thinking together. They're trying to generate a feeling, whether they put music on in the background. That's bringing up some feeling. When you have music in the background, it brings up feelings. And then you have somebody talking, and if they happen to have a good resonance in their voice, you might be a little bit more, ooh, that might come into reality, right? You might even get people moved to tears, so now we got more feeling, and that becomes contagious. We're trying to bring things into reality, but make your mind up here. We are trying to manifest a healing. We need them to be better. We want them to be better. And they might even have an effect on that person because they believe it and they feel loved and da-da-da-da-da. And they might have a temporary healing. But it will come back. Whatever they had in that chakra area is going to come back because they did not source the reason why it existed in the first place. They're trying to mask over what's going on in that system. And they're trying to will something into creation, but you take off enough people's will and you take your mind off of it long enough, it's going to come back to the way it was, because this is the nature of that person's architecture once you remove all the people putting their energy on it. Am I making sense? Because you can't have them in constant prayer for the rest of your life.
Right.
There's a reason for that disease to be there, and you can be read and reverse engineered and understood, and it's pointing to something that's happened in your architecture. So every disease out there, every illness, every pain and ache you have is psychosomatic. I mean, hear it again. It's psychosomatic, meaning it is mind-made. It does not mean you're not having real chemical reactions. It does not mean there isn't something truly happening in the flesh. It is, too, but it was sourced where? In poor architecture of the mind. And that's what creates chemistry to cause the issues that are going on. So you have complete power. Are you hearing this? Even though it sounds like I'm sitting there going, it's all your fault. Because I am. it's not really all your fault, but it's all your responsibility to clean up because you were actually born into this fucking mess, right? We have Christians always talking about, you're born into sin. I'm a born sinner. Yeah, you were born into errors in the family, syntax errors that are passed down in the family. Yes, you were born into that. Guess whose fucking job it is to clean it up, though? Yours. Don't expect your parents to do it for you. Don't expect them to be even aware that there is something to clean up. But it's your job. And as you're cleaning it up, it's not your job to fucking blast them forevermore because they didn't do it. Because maybe they were born in a time period where awareness wasn't happening yet on the planet. Get the fuck over it. Love your parents anyway. Honor them. Honor them by telling them what you found. Honor them without fucking slamming them. Yes, I want to rebuke what you guys did because I don't want to do it that way. But I recognize why you did it that way because that's what your generation called for. And so we want everybody to recognize that nobody's doing this shit on purpose. Sure, there's maniacal people on the planet, but nobody's doing this shit on purpose. For the most part. Really, when you get down to it, nobody's really at fault when they're younger. But when you receive this message I'm giving into you now, from this day forth, you not fixing it is your fault. Prior to today, it wasn't your fault. You were just born into these situations. But guess what? It is whose responsibility? Your responsibility to clean this shit up. And what you clean up, your kids get naturally. So just as much as the sins of the fathers are visited on the sons, it goes for daughters and mothers too. Your cleanup absolutely affects the pattern kids that are connected to you. And the other one that might be connected to the other parent can learn it from you through association. My point is, you have power to change the legacy of this DNA pattern and this ancestry forevermore. You have power to change the world through all your offspring and even your actions in your life for eons. You can be the game changer of this entire ancestral history. That's huge. Presidents can be born of that. Leaders can be born of that. Inventors can be born of that. Genius will erupt from somebody along that line. Genius can erupt from you now. Because all your genius is wrapped up in your limited thinking. When you get rid of the limited thinking borrowed from the parent programs that you're using as false idols, designing your life for you, when you close those out and you learn how to ask and receive from an optimum force that wants to bring into light what's most optimum for you, that serves yourself and others, your purpose is going to be amazing. And it's going to send you all over the place. You're going to feel so good about it because your whole system is designed for that purpose, and it will create ecstatic joy inside of you to serve it. Ecstatic joy. You'll feel so on game and so enthralled with your abilities. And you'll realize there's genius in you. There's genius in your creation. You activating that genius means it gets to be yours. But that genius was always there waiting for you to find it. One of the premier things we have to accomplish is getting our left and our right hemispheres to agree. Left and right hemispheres plays right along with that law of attraction with thinking and feeling. All of us can agree that we have a thinker inside of us, right? We have thoughts. And all of us can agree we have chemistry inside of us that has feeling. So all of us can agree we have kind of a masculine attribute and we have a feminine attribute inside of just the single me. And Christ would have called those the bride and the bridegroom. And he says, won't you be excited to be invited to the great wedded feast, which is when these two can come together in holy matrimony. But you have to have a minister that does that, right? You got to have a priest or a minister or a pastor or rabbi or something that is supposed to marry the two. And what this represents, when you start to really, Christians, get into your Bibles a little bit deeper, I would like you to take it to a quantum level to understand your Bible. I'd like you to take it to a level of understanding that whenever it talks about females in the Bible, that I want you to register it as your feminine side, your feeler. When it talks about males, I want it to register the masculine side, your thinker. And so when it says women, be submissive to your husband, stop thinking it happens to be out here with our sex orientations. And I would like you to think of it as Your emotions, meaning your irrational, lower quality aspects of feeling. Feeling, fruits of the spirit, what I call feeling, which are the higher register. But the lower register I consider emotion, which means lack of motion in a chakra. Emotional people means they're really, really still acting on instinct and being reactive to life. They're no different than animals. And so emotional people need to, this side of the brain needs to be submissive to what? Logic, which is the masculine side of the brain. So women being submissive to their husbands is no longer a constitution or a law for people to be experiencing out here. This is something to be internally experienced within oneself. And once they do that, then once emotional, once it's been strung through logic and it has reason and you give everything balance and understanding, then it can be strung back through as intuition, still small voice, and feeling, and you'll be able to use it as a GPS mechanism, as a God positioning system. And you can awaken your navigation equipment and trust it instead of going, oh, something's always wrong here, and having a gut reaction. Instead, you're going to be able to follow your heart. So that's what we want with this function. But let's learn a little bit more about each side before we decide what we're going to do with this. So we talked about having a masculine groom experience and having a feminine. So let's go ahead and write those down. So let's say this is more of your masculine nature, and this one's more of your feminine nature. And if I was to ask you guys, is the masculine the giver or is the feminine the giver? What do you think you would answer? Deborah, do you know?
Masculine is the giver.
She says the masculine is the giver, but oftentimes when I have a bigger group of people that have never seen this before, they often say, it's the female. They think the females are the givers. And that tells you how out of difference that we are from 2,000 years ago when the Bible was written, right? The females are considered the givers because they're the ones doing everything, and we consider what? The males to be?
Takers.
Wow. Or maybe givers also. I think everybody's gotten very masculine in this world. Would you agree? Because we've gone through 2,500 years, the whole Piscean age, of paternalism. That paternal was the leader. Women, be submissive to your husbands. That everything's been paternalized. This is a giving energy, yes. How do we remember that? Just think penis. It's giving it to her, okay? And then we have the receiving energy. And you remember that because of the vagina. Because it's the hole and it's supposed to receive the giving energy, right? We got this down. Now, doesn't it make sense that we all have both energies inside of us? If you think about this in a computer sense, we all have a giving energy and a receiving energy, which means we can write code to be processed and virtually brought back to us. But when we bring it back to us, isn't it that a good time to receive what we built and maybe make a new acknowledgement of how we could do it better? And then we can write new code, start to shift it, and send it to the big computer, the quantum computer, and it's going to bring back what that would look like. And do I like this? Does this feel right? I'm receiving what I created, right? I'm asking and receiving. I'm commanding. Remember, ask is not a question mark necessarily in computer programming, is it? When you ask your computer, what are you doing? You're typing a command message. Go get this information, are you not?
Yeah, you're demanding.
Yeah, you're commanding it. So I want you to think of ask as a command or as a programming and coding. If you think about it that way, then you won't plead with God, please bring this to me. What do I need to do to get this? When you're doing that, you're not commanding the computer. You're not in knowingness. You want to command. If you're in a state of knowingness, it's much more effective. Knowingness means your left and your right hemispheres are in full coherence. When you're in full coherence, things come into being like this because there's no atmosphere. There's no limitations to falter through. And so you can attract to you what you think of almost immediately. It's amazing. So that's what we're working toward. But I want you to think how disorganized your brains are right now. Would you want all the shit in your brain right now to be able to come to light immediately? No. Aren't you glad there's atmosphere right now for it to slow it down? So you kind of get little signs. Oh my God, that's how it's going to come? No. Change your mind. Change your mind. Change your mind. Thank God we have fail-safe programs in us. So sometimes when I meet someone who has their feelings completely turned off, it's It's a savior for them to have their feelings off. And their feelings have turned off because their system knows if they create any more, they have fuel for those thought forms, they're going to capsize themselves. So when I meet somebody that's drinking too much or apathizing some other way, potting out too much, I know that their system is forcing them into a behavior that permits them not to create any more from the status that they're at. Now, they have to quit that addiction in order to generate enough feeling again for us to create new computing. And that's why a lot of people fail at addictions and quitting them, because they're just trying to will themselves not to do the addiction with no understanding as to why they're attracting the addiction. And it's probably from family patterns in addition to a fail-safe program in their system. It's really important that we don't judge people about these things. We try to understand what's infecting them and why. And so we do want to get them sober to a point that we can do the work, but they need to be in a kind place, a safe place for them to do that. We need to kind of take them away from their norm so that they can experience that safely and work through some traumas that they want to hide from so badly they rather inebriate. So it's really important that we understand these kind of concepts. So the left hemisphere has to do with, if I'm creating a website, and let's pretend the website is like our virtual reality experience. I'm going to write HTML code, probably in a WordPress program application. I'm going to code with lots of symbols and what?
Codes.
Words, right?
Words.
I'm going to use a lot of words and symbols. So when we're using our left brain, we are creating with the word. The world was created by the word, and the word becomes your God. Little g, big G, God, depending on how you word. Word up. Right? You gotta want to word up. I know it's an 80s reference, but
I still have that album.
oh, word up is good. We want to understand that this side is something that we are using. We're using the word on this side. So it's like looking at your screen when you're writing the matrix code. This word is gonna, what do we need to do to do words? What is the masculine left side brain important for? What kind of computing does it do? Is it doing visual functions? Is it what's it doing? Reason, analytical. So this side is totally responsible for analytical. This is how you'll remember it. People who have too much left brain are anal. They're assholes. Analytical functioning, which starts off when we're little kids. If this is a baby, or if this is the baby, humanity as a baby, they start off here and they start growing this way. They're instinctual when they're first born. But as they start growing through here, they're going to hit this circle that is representative of the left brain. So this is when they start learning language, right? This is when they start developing words and language.
Cause and effect.
Cause and effect, exactly. Yeah. And so when little kids hit right here, they're starting to gather data. In fact, what is the first word that most kids say?
Data.
Oh, data. What the fuck? Right? It's right there. Once they connect and create enough data, then they're going to be able to do what? What's the next step from data? They're going to start building ideas, and they're going to start creating maybe strings of data. They're going to have ideas, and with these ideas, they're eventually going to do what? They're going to create agreements, right? They're creating agreements that this is called this with other people. So now they're going to have agreements. When you've developed enough agreements as you start to age, as you go up here a little bit, you got past the sponge stage. When you go to school at 5 years old, somewhere around here, and you're in your sponge stage, what's happening to you? You've turned off your feelings, so now you just got data deluge. Over time, through experiences of fight and flight programming that's borrowed from mom and dad, they're going to happen at school even when this kid's a little kid. And it's honestly just another revolution of their parents' bad patterns are going to happen to them as a kid, because the kid is forced to mimic all the things that the parents haven't processed yet. See, every one of your things you haven't processed or you think you have to hide in a secret, your children have to act out for you to let you know you're still hiding it. And so they are forced to act out your sin, tax, errors. Once we have some agreements on things, now getting to higher order thinking, what are kids able to do? Once we have agreements what things are called, and we start to get ideas, we can start putting stuff together, what happens next?
They act on it?
They might act on it, but I think they're going to start developing reason and logic. This is where you were saying. So they're going to start being able to have the ability to reason, break things down, this for that. If you do this, this will happen. So reason, and that's basically another word for logic. And once they do this, but what's the other thing that little kids have to get in school? What do they have? What do the teachers always have on the front of the room? They have the consequences for what? The rules.
Boundaries.
So we are going to start getting deluged by adults or by Old Testament God, a whole bunch of rules and laws and what else? Warnings and wrath and lists of consequences. How Old Testament does that sound? So I want you to imagine the Bible and humanity, if we want to just call this Genesis, if we're looking at it through a Christian viewpoint, humanity was about right here, still creating what? The 10 Commandments. Isn't that what Old Testament's all about? Following all the laws of God. So it's very robotic, I think. We teach our kids to be robots. Obey. Do as I say. Positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement. Do what I say. Obey. Very Old Testament. Because children are just needing to create a concrete idea of things. They're not capable of abstract yet. Abstract can't happen until you get to higher order of stuff. So they're building concrete thinking. This would be an Old Testament concept. Old Testament concept is paternal, guys. That's why it's called God the Father in Old Testament. It's masculine. However, people are going to grow, they're going to grow, and they're going to grow, and all along this time, they're suppressing more emotion, suppressing more of the feminine, some more of the feminine. Our entire last 2,500 years has been suppression of the feminine. Now, I'm not just talking about women with boobies and vaginas. I'm talking about the feminine in men, too. Being able to be compassionate, to be able to be kind. We were in a very middle-age kind of idea. And then all of a sudden, here's this moment that happens right here. All of a sudden, we're being forced back into the circle that has all the emotion and all the feeling. And when this happens, notice where it happens, right at midpoint. This is what we call midlife crisis. Pleasure principle doesn't work anymore. All the combustible feelings your amygdalas are filling up and it's popping to its top. And you're venting and you're angry. You might be menopausal. Younger people are actually getting these states of mind. I was just working with one today. She's 27. She's in midlife crisis. Because younger people get feedback way quicker than us older people got. Because they have Amazon and Google and all, right? And a lot more news and self-awareness and freedom in school to speak themselves and to be more authentic. And they have much more freedom to exert identity where we didn't. We were obeyers. We were in this paradigm. So they're waking up way, way sooner. So when they hit this point, this is the point where you either say, Jesus H. Christ, or you say, oh, Jesus, save me. And that's because this bright brain, right? Oh, Jesus, save me. It's your Jesus moment, right? Come to Jesus moment, they call it. But without giving it, an evangelistic kind of Christian motif, I want to help you understand that. When this happens, nothing looks like it's reasonable anymore. Nothing works to suppress your emotion. Nothing's working to hide anymore. Guess what's happening to the planet right now? Guess what we just hit? Yeah. And that's what's turned as Armageddon.
Yeah.
This is apocalypse moment. This is an apocalypse time. And so in this moment, we got to cross this barrier. And you know what most people want to do right here? They're going to try everything that they can imagine. They're going to try everything to apathize their feelings. They're going to try everything to turn off their feelings, even though it's not going to work. So what's the big ones people are turning off their feelings with right now? Alcohol. Prescriptions, antidepressants,
anxiety,
pot, sex, porn, sleeping pills. Oh my gosh, that is a huge thing right now. What else? Helicopter moms spending too much time on the kids, over crazy about organic foods or what they're reading in labels. People might suddenly get into too much exercise, and then they want too much sex because they feel good in those bodies that feel a little bit younger, and then they're cheating on their wives. All this stuff happens, or on their husbands. Yeah, religion. Then they go I'm going to go Sunday night, Wednesday, I'm going to do the church mission, and I think that I am doing my God-given civic God duty. And yet, it's duty. Because that's this framework, and it's duty. And duty sounds just like it is. Shitty. Duty. We're not supposed to be doing things out of obligation or duty. New Testament is about learning how to open up your feelings and to hear the still small voice and to have a direct connection and to hear and know how to reason that through and to weep and transfigure and recognize that you are made of God, that you have Holy Spirit in you. That's how they talk about it. We'll put that in layman's terms. You're to learn that your design has perfection in it. Every fucked up thing you've experienced, you can turn it into perfection. You can turn it into something useful for you instead of something to avoid or something to feel bad about or something to want to blame somebody for and play victim from or pretend it's not there. None of that's working. And so when this Jesus moment hits, then all of a sudden, instead of numbing out, and now if you numb out, you're going to crash. You're going to hit a crash point. And that's where our entire planet is right now. We're in a crash point. We are at the make or break moment. This is just like people back in Noah's Ark days, fucking, here comes the flood, and if you can't hear God directly, you don't have that line open, you're not going to know where to be during this epidemic, this pandemic, this political stuff that might happen with revolutionary riots. Who knows what's going to happen then too? You need to be prepared. You need to know how to listen within. And you need to not be making really strong opinions about political right or left. If you're going right or left, you are not in the center, which we're going to talk about. You're going either mom's side or dad's side, but you are not in the middle with God. And that doesn't mean I'm being lukewarm either. I'm choosing what's optimum for one and all. There's those people out there like, politics so gone, the system's so gone, I'm just not going to vote, and they don't do anything else in their mind. That's a lukewarm Christian or a lukewarm person. And those people are going to be the first to go. At least the other people have something to learn because they chose a side so they can learn that they got the wrong side, only to find out the other side's just as wrong because both sides are wrong. If you think one of your parents is up here and one of your parents is down here, you've got it wrong. It was both of them. It took two. You don't have a freaking saint and martyr at home. You had a codependent. And the narcissist or the person that took advantage of all that was actually doing exactly what the codependent permitted him to do. And this codependent was the one that had the power to change it to this. So your codependent parent that you're holding way up here is the shittiest parent of all. Why? Because they could have said no and straightened this up. Putting it back on the codependents, which are usually my audience. Yeah. Let's pull it all together. So there is this wonderful phrase that Christians talk about in the Bible. It says, I am the way, the truth, and life, and no one can come unto the Father except through me. And that used to bother me when I was younger because I was raised Baptist, Southern Baptist, very fire and brimstone, guilt and shame, and women suck. And we hated Catholics. They're going to hell. Because we really were convinced everybody's going to hell but us. Got to have Jesus this way and this way only. Catholics, to us, were going to hell because they had to use a priest to talk to the Father, and we told them that talking to the Father was something we could do ourselves. And yet, it didn't make sense to me when I was a kid. There was no logic in it when Christ would say, I am the way, the truth, and life, and no one can come unto the Father except through me. Doesn't that just make him a priest? And I felt like Baptists were fucking retarded. And I'm like, isn't that just another priest? And it felt very egoic to me the way it was delivered to me. And I felt like, if this dude, Christ, was really of God, why would he have to be egoic? And why would he need all the credit? And why would he need us calling his name? And none of it made sense to me. And I'm going to tell you today why it didn't make sense to me, because my little ears could hear. Paid real good attention. And it could sense when information was off, because I couldn't turn my feelings off because my dad was so cruel and so mean and so scary abusive that I had to keep my feelings on so I could read the moment, so I would know when to escape, when to hide, when to move. And if I didn't have my feelings on, I would have been a thinker first, like the rest of Americans going to school. I learned to be a feeler first. Most feeler first people are in dangerous areas, ghettos, third world countries. And I happen to be one of those feeler first people, which is different than the paradigm I'm going to show you, because most Americans are under this paradigm. But the good thing I was feeler first, because I sensed that I was not getting truth. I sensed there was something wrong with this logic. And I knew to not avoid that. So it stuck with me a long time, but telling my dad that it wasn't truthful was just another nod on the head. No, thank you. So I kept it to myself. And so when Christ says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one can come unto the Father except through me, let's talk about this pineal gland being the Father. The pineal gland is smack dab in the middle of your brain, and it is like having your Wi-Fi on, and it allows you to connect to the all. Notice how I say the all this time instead of God. The all means it can pick up information from all the users, which means people and bodies, and all the potentialities and parallel realities, which means outside time and space. And I can ask for it to show me the most optimum function that will serve my sense of what's best for what's right for one and all. I can call forth that answer from that resource. Christ called it Father, not because it was a big dude in heaven with a big hairy beard. He called it Father because it's the only way he could relate to the people at the time to explain the parenting computing function that it was. It's a force that's trying to bring you everything you could ever want for, hope for. It's your optimization code. And he's trying to teach you, he's trying to bring to you what a firstborn son would get from a father. He's trying to give you all your inheritance. Everything that you truly are. And so he called it Father. He says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And no one can come unto the Father except through me. What he was trying to say is, you cannot sense or feel or know what God is transmitting back to you if you don't have what open. I've already talked about it. What do you have to have open in order to sense? What? Heart. You got to have your feelings on. So when he says, I am the way and the truth and the life, and no one can come into the Father except through me, in order for me to ask, I need to have my feelings open to receive, to use the antenna to know when I'm getting good data or not, right? And good vision. And so when he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one can come unto the Father except through me, if you have to have your feelings on to go to the Father, what does he represent?
Right brain.
Righteousness. Right brain. He represents the feminine mind turning on in everybody. Yeah, it's not a holier than thou moment saying you need me, Jesus. He was representing something in this diagram. He was showing you the way to go right, to be righteous, so that you can have your own receiver to hear God. Whoa. That's good stuff. That's telling you that you have the power. When you clear up your feelings, you can use ask and receive and get information for every moment you step into. In fact, you want to stay in that constant state of humility. Humility doesn't mean making yourself small. Humility means to make yourself understand that you could have to be in a constant state of asking to get the all. So yes, you're a piece. So if you want to call that small, that's fine. But humility means to be in a constant state of asking so that something great can come through you, but you are to be bold, not humble, like secretive and your light needs to shine for others, gosh darn it. So you are meant to be bold in the state of humility. Sounds paradoxical, and it is. That's how you know you found it. In order to do that, we have to recognize, how do we ask and receive from this? Well, let's talk about this right brain first. So if this side is the side you compute words and symbols to produce what? What are you trying to produce on the screen? If you're trying to... Images. So this is where you get images, or let's just use imagination. What does imagination permit us to do? Well, first of all, let's talk about this. If this is the analytical side, what is this side? What do women get to do that men don't get to do?
Creative.
They're creative. This is the creative side. Because we can be creative with the imagination. Now, but mind you, it's all these words that allowed this to come to light. And now that this comes to light, we can reflect on it to see if we want to go change any more code to get even a better image back at us. Do you see what I'm talking about? And that's what we're doing with our worlds. And so imagination, your creative side, is you're going to be able to register, not through words, but through your feelings. Or maybe it'll produce emotions. Or maybe it'll give you sensations or sensory in the body. Just like those 3 things are over there. These are how you are receiving the information. That's why the still small voice isn't often in words. It's in a vision, or it's in a dream you had, or it's a knowingness. It's not in words. It's in like a big movie that suddenly got condensed in, but you know what all that movie is in that single second. This is an analog side. This is a digital side. It's much faster to go back and forward and backward on a digital. Have you gone to go look at a VCR in a long time? And pop in that fucking VCR tape, and you hit rewind, how long does it fucking take? You're like, that's terrible. But what can you do with the digital? You can go forward and back really fast, can't you? This side is so much more happening, but this side cannot exist without this side. And this side can exist without this side, but it's gonna be a bunch of scribbles. Bunch of symbols. And boring. So humanity is waking up, and we're right here. And if you kind of get this already, then why aren't you fucking teaching it to others? And if you aren't completely working on how to get here, which is what I'm going to give you next, the application stuff, then get this shit done. What are you waiting for? You're living in a cesspool of your own defunct programs. What the fuck? How long do you want to sit there? It's nobody's fault but yours now. Let me say it again. You're responsible to clean up. And now, when you're receiving information today, it is your fault if you don't fix it. Nobody else's. It's on you now. This message has got to get to a lot of people. And there's a lot of you that are meant to be teaching it, and you need to get your asses out there and not depend on me to do it. I'm trying. All right. What does having the imagination side permit us to do from human to human? How's it useful? Can you watch TV and have a reaction to TV? There are actors. It's not even a real situation most of the time. Reality TV is not real. Why can actors in a staged movie bring feeling up in you? What's it making you do? It's making you what? If you can have an emotion, it's moving you. It's moving you.
Yeah.
When you get moved, what does that mean? That's different than crybabying, isn't it? When you get moved, it means you're seeing something from a new perspective, a new lens, new option, new computer programming going on. So TV can be a wonderful tool. It can also be an apathy tool, but it can be a wonderful tool to learn from other people's mistakes, other people's learning, other people's inspirations very quickly. Another reason why these kids can grow so quickly when they're younger, because they have so much access to so much. So when you're getting mad at your kids for having their faces and their nose and their social media, stop it. Because they're not learning. They're learning faster than you ever thought. They are learning, they're growing when they're going back and forth with their friends, and even when there's bullying, there's learning going on. There is. And I'm not letting the stalkers happen though. When you get moved, so you just said another word a second ago. What does it allow humans to do? It allows them to have empathy. And empathy permits what? Compassion. And another big one. Compassion. And you might find a new understanding. And if you have a new understanding with someone, you might have for-give-ness, which means no more shame and blame. And all that'll be left, just like in tennis, love. You'll have zero negative programs going on. You won't have shame and blame, so the ledger is clear. So it comes to 0 point or love in tennis. Isn't 0 love in tennis? Yep. That's how you remember 0 point. It's all the same stuff. Golly. So if we can get all this from that, we need to understand, how do we do this forgiveness thing? So full coherence of mind will attract to you wholeness and joy. When you can get your feeler and your thinker to fully agree, and it takes this minister and a lot of ask and receive and new insights for you to clean up those two sides, because otherwise you can't serve two masters. You're either going to be a left brainer or you're going to be a right brainer, or you're going to finally get God on and you're going to balance the two and stop holding mom and dad as your creators anymore and hold them out as just a human just like you. That needs to be rebuked, forgiven, and understood. Full coherence of mind. Just like there's three circles there, there's the left circle, the right circle, and the middle circle. That's a Holy Trinity. People think it's the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. What the fuck? We got a Father, we got a Son. Who do you think helped make that Father and Son? Female? But we call it a ghost because it didn't exist in the Piscean age. So we call it the Holy Ghost because this was just a ghost. Right brain functioning in the paternal age was just not there. It was a ghost. There was a hint, but you didn't have it full on. But now we're entering the age of Aquarius, right? Not the Piscean age with the fish with Christ. Christ brought information so that I can interpret it, give it to you. There's other interpreters out there giving it to you. And that fish has lived its life out. Now we're moving the age of Aquarius where you got this bearded man pouring out a vase of water. That means it's time for the males, including the male aspects and females, the males to finally express emotion, to express the feeling, which is water. And so we're moving to that age. That's where we are, beginning of the age of Aquarius. By the end of age of Aquarius, we should have this mastered completely. But you could be the forerunners of this. You could be the like the disciples in Christ were at the beginning of the Piscean age, understanding stuff for the end of the age at the beginning of the age. You could go through this whole age fully embodied, just like the disciples could. This is an opportunity. This is also a Holy Trinity. The conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and the unconscious mind. Right now, most people's God mind is unconscious. And most people's parent and viral patterns is still subconscious. They're not, it's underneath. They don't know what's there. Unconscious means they're not even directing anything through God, or a false God of some kind of dictator from Old Testament that doesn't exist anymore, right? And then there's your conscious mind. This one's producing the good, this one's producing the bad, and this one's producing the ugly right now. And you are in a Trinity format. And that is not, that's not divine. It's empty. You're continuously creating good, bad, and ugly in your atmospheres out here because you're divided in here. Let's talk about what that means. This one's the past, the inner child, all the things that have happened to date. This one represents what? The present. The conscious mind represents the present. The unconscious mind,
Future.
ever shall be. Infinite past, infinite future. So this is going to house all your ancestral data. And how does it do that? It does that through DNA. So infinite past and infinite where things are to go. So I don't like to use the word future necessarily, but the infinite present moment. Because when we think future, we might want to try to outcome focus something into reality, but that comes from need and want. We are not here to think of something I want in the future and hold an outcome and then let that drive it into reality. That is manifesting. I am not teaching that tonight. I'm taking you level up. I want you to not hold the future in your mind. I want you to hold a consciousness in your present moment that allows things to formulate around you and unfold to you better than you could have imagined it. Hear it again. Better than you can imagine it. I want to teach you how to create architecture that draws forth better than you can imagine things of God, and you are used as a vessel to bring them to the ground and to light. That will serve the greater whole and yourself. You will not be asked to sacrifice like Christ. That is the last sacrifice ever made. You're not supposed to be sacrificing. Get Catholic ideas out of your head. Get the Baptist ideas out here. You are here to live wholly, fully. Those are the promises given to us based on this man who taught us all the programming that we would be able to understand at the end of age. That's amazing. I source him. I think he's great. But he was also a man that suffered. He was a man that was raised as a bastard. That's why he's missing from 12 to 30 years old in the Bible that Constantine of 325 AD fooled around with and pulled a bunch of books out, because those bunch of books would have been him flubbing up with his power. Because just like you, he flubbed up with his power. And he was angry for being treated like a bastard. Why do you think he was so revolutionary? I gotta leave this place. Let's go create a new thing. Fuck yeah, because he wasn't even allowed to marry. You have to remember, he was raised as a bastard. I don't care about the immaculate thing or not immaculate thing. Everybody then thought he was a bastard. Whether he was or wasn't, doesn't matter. That's how he was treated. If you feel like the black sheep of your family, you're the Christ bringer in your family, meaning consciousness of Christos bringer in your family. If you're the one that doesn't fit in, you were the one that was supposed to go lead and find a path of your own and then maybe bring it back home. But even Christ, when he brought it back home, what happened? He was denied. He was taken to a cliff to be thrown over. In fact, he couldn't even perform miracles in his hometown because guess what they knew him as?
Master.
Which meant their system could not receive him as the new him. Your people that you are normally around are not going to receive the new you. You have to go fashion it elsewhere and then bring it back and try. Depends on what kind of relationships and how much advancement is going on. But Christ is very clear. You can't perform miracles in your hometown, and I'm not going the fuck back ever again. Mm-hmm. Meaning, you have to make sure you're always going forward. Don't look back. You'll turn like into a pillar of salt. Yeah. So this Trinity is our problem. It's time to move into what? Atonement. We need a singular message sent from our being that can bring back an optimum experience. And that can only happen, did I freak you out?
I just got something.
What? Oh, you did?
Yeah.
You just had a moment?
Yeah.
And it moved you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt you go.
Yeah.
So this is what we have to procure, which is what we're doing here. Full coherence of mind means that the left's not leading anymore, the right's not leading anymore, they're not conflicting in each other, and we don't have God just disappeared, nothing. We finally got God leading both of them in balance, and it's become one. It's working as one. And that's what we have to do with this. So let's understand what we're doing, because I'm going to give you application processes. So your conscious mind, which is all you have in the present moment, because the only changes and growth you can have are right here in the present moment, is the only place that has power. However, we got this subconscious mind with a bunch of data in there, borrowed from mom, dad, society, teachers, that we've got to go through. But the only tool we have is to use our conscious mind effectively. Our conscious mind, just think of it as frontal lobe. Short-term memory of being able to do things, but being able to ask long-term memory things from short-term memory and then coming back, right? Just like you would on your screen. Oh, I better go look up that file. And then you come back to here and you do your stuff, right? Okay. Subconscious mind is filled with two things. We've got your amygdalas. That's where we house those traumas. And we don't have ready access to those. We hide them from ourselves involuntarily. You've got vaults of information in your brain that your brain has deemed too scary for you to look at, so we're going to keep that vault away from you. But now you have to be wise enough, these vaults, these amygdala vaults, located in the temporal lobe region of the brain. So every time you hear temple in the Bible, it's talking about this region of the brain, temporal lobe. And you got to descend into this hell, just like Christ did when he was crucified. You got to descend into this hell. There's going to come a moment where you're betrayed by everything around you, and that's okay. It's a good moment. That's what's happening right now on the planet. You're going to descend into this hell, and you're going to resurrect this data, and you're going to transfigure it through the past self, and then the present self, and then the optimum self, so you can rise it up and bring gold to it. You're no longer lead and heavy from it. You're an alchemist, and you can change your chemistry by changing your thought forms and perspectives through those three configurations to bring it to oneness, to something of light that serves one and all, that holds no unforgiveness, that holds no shame, that holds no blame, and you truly are in last judgment. This is Armageddon, people. But it doesn't have to end. You could be on the New Jerusalem side. Amygdalas, traumas, are where they're housed. So this is the stuff we don't have access to. And then we have our hippocampus, where we have a lot of faulty bad data, but it's at least accessible data. This is what we usually allow ourselves to access, but both of these make up the subconscious mind. So we got to figure out how to get in these two amygdalas, the beast of the land and the beast of the sea. It says in the book of Revelation, the beast of the land represents the masculine side, the beast of the sea represents the feminine side, and we got to clean out patterns from mom and dad. The beasts that come through mom and dad that we're holding and housing in our own architecture. And then we have the unconscious mind, which is an infinite, both directions, because I don't like the word eternal. I like infinite. Eternal to me is this kind of eternity, and to me this is going down the same old track every fucking lifetime, Groundhog Day, but somebody's stealing my energy. Don't like this one. I like infinity, a different feeling of infinity, and there's different signs for that out there, but this eternal life one feels weird and funky. I like infinite. I don't know why, it just sounds right to me. So the DNA has your ancestral data in it, basically telling you what your family has learned and what they haven't learned yet, and that's what opened up your game. And then we have your pineal gland, and this is your GPS. Remember, your God positioning system. You got to wake that up, and you can't wake that up unless you have what up again? Your feelings. Your feelings and your emotions have to be exposed and processed. So these are the three functions in memory that we're trying to work to bring into oneness. And we can't do that. We can't beat these generational curses, these system bugs, these demons, until we understand what forgiveness is. So let's understand what forgiveness is. Let me tell you what forgiveness is not. It's not letting go. That doesn't exist. There's no delete in your consciousness. Have you noticed? I don't care what you eat, drink, take, do. There's no delete. Maybe you can get a lobotomy and it deletes it, but I don't even think it deletes it then. Don't have delete, so forgiveness is not letting go. Forgiveness isn't taking the higher road. What does that sound like? Sounds like you're lifting yourself higher than someone else. That sounds like a judgment. So that's not it. And so what forgiveness is, it's taking what came before, which is through your parents and things like that in your past. And who did you give that STD, that spiritually transmitted disease, to? Who did you give it to?
Kids.
Right, kids or partners or friends or employees or peers. So we're realizing it's a system bug, generation to generation. Maybe sometimes to somebody in the present. So what came before and who did you give it to? To get to forgiveness, we've got to get these not just to a balance like maybe Buddhists will do. We need to get it to 0 point. And the only way to do that is to get your conscious mind and your subconscious mind and your unconscious mind to unite as one. And so we need this really cool thing called the Ark of the Covenant, or the Great Chalice, or the capstone on the top of a pyramid. Lots of concepts, symbolic concepts. And you want to get your conscious mind to jump way over this middle finger, the subconscious stuff, because right now you're living this kind of life. This sucks. Your subconscious is running everything. This is your life. And if you want it to not be your life anymore, you got to use that wonderful conscious mind of you to connect to what? The pineal gland. We need to create a code. We need to create a way to create an arc over this big, tall middle finger. And we need to bisect this, and we need all of this under one umbrella. And you'll notice that dark suddenly looks like a light bulb. And this is called what? The filament, or full of men? And what do? So I used to think Ark of the Covenant was this golden thing that we needed to find in Oak Island or wherever the fuck they're digging for this thing. That, the Knights of Templar had to go hide and da-da-da-da. But I think that's not important. I think it's what it symbolizes is important. And what it symbolizes is a program. David gave us a similar program in Old Testament. It was called Psalm 23. Though I walk through the valley of shadow of death, blah, 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 blah. And to me, if Christ was born under the Star of David, he's the reincarnated David. In fact, I know that so well because if you look at generational patterns, David, who we hold on high, he was, David and Goliath's story when he was a little flautist and he killed the Philistine because he did the Psalm 23 prayer and he showed everybody how you could overcome great controversies and move mountains, basically. And then he grows up to be the king, and then he's the king and he sends people to war. And he sent his best friend even off to the front lines, gave him a really good task. And then he sees his wife Bathsheba from his balcony, and he's like, ooh, she's hot. And so even this guy that all Christians, Judeo-Christians, and Jewish people even hold way up here, this David guy did what? He had adulterous sex with Bathsheba. And he impregnated her, and he was so worried about this that he called his friend back from the front lines without his men to come be there with her. Hopefully they would lay together, and he could put it in his mind that that was his seed, not his seed. But his friend refused out of goodness in his heart. My soldiers can't lay with their wife, so I shall not. And David knew that he would be found out, so he sent his friend to a different front where he would be killed. And in him being killed, the secret could be kept, but now she's free, and he can even bring her into his world, and King Solomon was born. Now, if Christ was born under the Star of David, what would be the proper way to be born if you created a bastard and hid it through a death of your best friend? What would King David be born of as the next lifetime to make it a fair karmic reaction? He'd be born a bastard. We got Christ. And he would be treated that way, as karma. But this karma somehow served a higher plane, a higher good. It created a revolutionary spirit in him that he used for something greater, didn't he? So even though he was born into the sin that he probably procured in his former life, I mean, reincarnation really is all over the Bible. How many times was it said that we think that John the Baptist is the return of Elijah? What does that fucking mean? It means reincarnation, guys. So all this was taken out of the Bible in 325 AD because they wanted you to believe you only got one go, so you would give everything to the church. That's not true. So study a little bit deeper. Get your knowledge under power. So the conscious mind needs to connect here. So Old Testament is Psalm 23, and then Christ comes out with what prayer? The only prayer, forget all that long-winded shit you get at church. What is the only prayer you need?
Lord's Prayer.
Lord's Prayer, because it's a program. It's programming code. And if you understand what you're really programming with it, it's not a punishment that should be done in church because you were a bad little girl or boy. What it is it's our Father. He's making the conscious mind connect with what? The pineal. He's saying, our Father. Why do we say our even when we're by ourselves? Because you're a me, myself, and I. Your past self, your present self, your optimum self. So our Father, meaning I want to access my pineal gland, who art in heaven, meaning the creative function in my mind, art. Hallowed be thy name, meaning I want to carve out a space for you, God. Hallowed be thy name. It uses T-H-Y because it's a combination of thou, which means God, and my, the Y from my to mean my, put them together, and you're saying thy will be done. It means I'm wrapping God and me back together again instead of being separated. So hallowed be thy name. Name is a fill-in-the-blank form. Your first name belongs there. You're now one of the names of God. You're attempting to be one of the names of God. Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. You're asking that this code, the optimum code, supersede your free will choices you've made all this fucking time. Because I'm going to tell you right now, free choice was never a fucking gift. It sucks. It's always lesser than optimum. Give it up. It sucks. Go with optimum. Best thing that'll ever happen to you. Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Meaning I want this to come to light. Please bring it to my vision and help me clean this up. So give us this day our daily bread is the biggest thing of this whole entire prayer. See, God was always giving to you. You were blocking. But what you're really asking for and give us this day your daily prayer is open my receiver. Meaning I'm ready to feel. It's going to feel like Pandora's box at first, but I'm expecting you to control that burn and that fuel. So when it says, give us this day our daily bread, that is the most important part in that it's asking my receiver to open. If I don't ask my receiver to open, even though it's going to feel like Pandora's box at first, I'm also asking God to control it. Give us this day our daily bread, meaning day by day, help me to unfold this scrambled mess I've got going on inside of me. So you're asking to receive those breadcrumbs instead of rejecting them because you only pay attention to the subconscious mind. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. is a forgiveness process that I'm going to give you right at the end. We're almost done. And lead us not into temptation, which means you're asking for protection from what normally would topple you. Those 7 deadly sins are fail-safe programs protecting you from your amygdala information, but you're asking for those 7 deadly sins to be turned off so you can go retrieve this data. So you're actually asking for lead us not into temptation, meaning turn those functions off. Those fail-safes are no longer saving me, they're killing me. Let's turn them off, because they were once the 7 lampstands, but now they're the 7 deadly sins to keep you distracted from going in there. For thine be the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. For thine be the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Means thine is again mine and thou at the same time. Thine means I want to continue to live under the humility of being an ask and receive at all times to serve the most optimum that serves myself and all others with no negative karmic kickback. I'm going to keep that online, but I am going to be bold with it. I am not to hide my flame. I'm not to hide my light. I'm to wear myself in a way that serves those who have the ears to hear. I am not to throw my pearls to swine, though. Do not spend time sharing what cannot be understood by those who are not ready. It is senseless. You are not here to evangelize. You are here to harvest. Those that have the ears to hear, those who your audience is. You're not trying to convince anybody of anything. People who have their feelings on can sense it. They know to listen. When you do this prayer, it's going to start lining up for you what needs to occur in order for your system to finally be debugged, defragged. Exercise all the demons so that there's nothing getting invited to you anymore that can erupt an emotion, a negative feeling. It goes away. So the last little piece to know is the 3-part process I've devised that'll help you honor your past, your present, and your optimum self in one scoop. We're going to start with mom, or we're going to start with dad. One or the other, not both at the same time. One's beast of the land, one's beast of the sea. Choose your beast. Usually go for the one that's most obvious first. And there's a 3-part process I have on lifechanginginsights.com that is under therapy tools. There's a 3-part process that talks about play the victim for your past self. You need to play victim and rebuke what wasn't okay. I don't want to receive that anymore. I don't accept that about myself. You made me feel small, but I know I'm not small. It's not okay you did those things. You're not ready to forgive them yet. Just in the first part, you play victim. You say how it hurts you. You get your voice. And then you say, it's not okay. That's not what I want in my life anymore. I want to see myself this way. But in part 1, if you play victim, that means you judged somebody. You judged yourself. You judged them perpetrator, judged yourself to be the victim. So the second part of your letter is going to be about you realizing you're a perpetrator or a perpetuator of the same pattern, meaning you uploaded. Judge not lest ye be judged is an algorithm that says if you judge something like that, it's going to upload an urge and temptation to become just like that person you judge. Now, some of us are very asleep and we will act out just like the person and not even see it. But most of us today think we're fixing the fucking problem and we go opposite of the parent. Just like I went opposite of my dad. My dad was super abusive and controlling and crazy and malicious. And so when I grew up to be a parent, I'm not going to turn it. I was pretty awake. I knew it hurt me. So what kind of a parent did I become to not be like him? Permissive. So I'm raising my son and my daughter, because my son is the male pattern, right? And my daughter is being the female pattern. So I'm raising my kids, and I'm being too permissive, which worked great for my daughter. But guess what it did to my son? Gave him full license to cross other people's boundaries. It gave him full license to not do anything he was ever told because I gave him too much voice. He didn't have any discipline in his system. And so guess what he was going to grow up and become just like? My dad. I was creating one. So I perpetuated the pattern. I didn't perpetrate it, but I perpetuated it. And I promise you've perpetrated it to yourself or perpetuated it to yourself or to your kids or to your partners. So the whole point of part 2 is to realize you are a perpetrator, a perpetuator. And then I also want you to look up the line and go, gosh, if I'm a perpetuator and I thought I was fixing it, was my dad trying to fix it too? And when I realized, oh my God, this is a skip the generation pattern. My grandmother, who was more interested in her art and her freaking spider monkeys and chimpanzees than her 5 children, she was more interested in that, so she never gave any moral education to her kids or control or anything at all. They had impulse control issues because there was never given any discipline. Just like me. Different reason, but just like me. So Dad, he was running on those impulses, but when he reached about, when he got with my stepmom, he realized he wanted to change the pattern. I want to be a better person. So he decides to find a religion that would give him a conscience because he had no conscience before that. So of course it's a fire and brimstone religion, which I didn't realize was serving the dude because he was freaking no shame before. Now he's going to get some shame. Well, I didn't get that before, right? And so here's my dad putting all this control on us, but still having impulse issues. So he might be touching me in the name of, or beating me in the name of out of rage, but I'm going to also give you good controls because I think you deserve to have controls. I realized my dad thought he was fixing the problem too. Now I can forgive him. It's not personal. His control of me and him putting too much parameters on me because he wasn't aware of the reaction it was giving him. He just thought he was fixing it because he was just looking upward. I'm going to do opposite of my parent. Just like I was. I wasn't looking at what it was really creating. I can forgive him for he knew not what he was doing. And I have to forgive myself for I knew not what I was doing. But now that I know, guess what I got to start giving my son? Some discipline, in addition to learning how to have a tactful, diplomatic, compassionate voice. Give him a voice, but teach him the parameters of other people's boundaries. So in that moment, I had true forgiveness. I had an understanding that it wasn't personal. He was trying to fix it. He was loving me in his own fucked up, weird way. And so I felt, wow, cool. So part 2 is over. Part 3 is you got to turn this lead to gold. My dad was impossible to live with. He still is impossible to even talk to today. But I got through everything he ever did. I was able to do this 3-part process and send every one of them to him and even got a couple conversations. I was brave enough to reveal myself completely. Whether he liked it or not, didn't matter. I was able to put it on the table. And I was able to also tell him I still care about him and that I forgave him. I understood that he was trying to fix it. So part 3 of my letter was, thank you, God, for giving me such a scary dad that I learned to be alert all the time, even though it was a big survival orientation. Now that alertness has turned to awareness, and I get to be thriving with it. Thank you for giving me such a scary dad that I learned to listen to the 6th sense, not just the 5 senses, and I paid attention to every little thing around me that I noticed facial expressions and micro expressions and people's voices. I could tell when people were lying, not lying, that I had to keep all that on. So I became this human lie detector and noticed everything my clients do. Nothing gets by me. I'm an amazing person to help you not freaking hide from yourself and help you see something. And I'm so tactful about it because I wasn't given any tact. I'm super compassionate and tactful and non-judgmental. I've done everything under the sun you're not supposed to do. So thank you, God. You had a plan for this man called my dad. And so now when I think of my dad, I don't think of the abusive, mean, maniacal, sociopathic, Christian cult leader type guy. You know what I think of him as? The person that produced my passion, my pathways, my genius, my deep, deep desire to find the righteousness in things. Even though I was Bible beaten with words of scripture, now I can turn them into words of wisdom. And so I'm glad that the freaking scriptures were inside of me, even though I used to think they were blasphemies at one point. They're now my saviors because I've turned it into quantum consciousness data. Part 3 is for you to realize you're still grateful for those experiences and you think they're full of gold. So when I think of dad, I think of the gold. I don't think of the pain. I don't have the pain anymore. I've processed all that. So when I read this letter out loud to my sister who could hear it, I only sent it to my dad, but when I read it to my sister who would have the same catharsis, and I read it to my mom who knew my dad and what she let him get away with, I had cathartic moments. And in those cathartic moments of reading it out loud, 2 or more are gathered. It is share. It's time to be weared. I know that doesn't rhyme. It should be share and worn, but I like share, wear better. And when you share it, you wear it. When I did that, that's when my catharsis hit. That's when I'm weeping just like Christ did in the garden, and you transfigure yourself. And that transfiguration is you're moving stuff. So when you have a deep weeping, that's a movement. You're taking data from this region and taking it out and putting it up here where you can refile it in the normal schema. And it no longer can come haunt you. This is why we do this work. This changes everything. And then after that, you have to ask and receive so that God's light can be shown to you, that each and every moment you know where to go next. And through the process of part 3, you're going to find out your purpose. You're going to find out what you're here to do. And it's going to come to you because you just got out of your own way, and the opportunities are going to start coming to you, and the vision and everything. And you will have the sight to see. You will have the blind shall see and the lame shall walk, and you will be in a different notion. And it's full of joy, I promise. So thank you for listening tonight. If you want an appointment, go to lifechanginginsights.com. There's a schedule tool there. If you want more information about our talks, please go to that website and you can see more videos, or you can go to my YouTube channel. Thank you, and you have a nice night. Take care.